Tonight, dozens of friends and family members of 33-year-old Houston area influencer Jana Gier gathered at Terry Hershey Park to say goodbye. Police say the woman was murdered late last month by a man who somehow got into her apartment and strangled her.
The apartment was eerily quiet when Mark Gagnier kicked down his daughter's door that Sunday afternoon in August 2021. What he discovered inside would haunt him forever and send shockwaves through the social media world. At just 33 years old, Mercedes Moore's life had ended violently in her own home, her neck bearing the unmistakable marks of strangulation. With 2.6 million Instagram followers, Mercedes was a social media sensation whose glamorous photos and lifestyle attracted fans worldwide, including one man whose obsession would prove fatal. This is the story of how Kevin Alexander Cordo, a complete stranger from Florida, became so fixated on Mercedes that he traveled over 1,000 miles to track her down and murder her.
An Instagram model with more than 2 million followers is found murdered in Richmond.
Tonight, police say they don't know or don't rather have a motive, but the suspect is dead too. Our Grace White is following the case.
Her name was Miss Mercedes Moore. At least that's what she goes by on Instagram, where she has more than 2 million followers. Her real name, Jana Gagnier, now dead at 33.
Welcome to True Crime Station, where we examine disturbing true crime cases with the respect and thorough analysis they deserve. If this is your first time here, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories and honoring victims like Mercedes who deserve to be remembered. Born Jana Gagnier on January 24th, 1988, in Houston, Texas, the woman who will become known worldwide as Mercedes Moore grew up in a working-class neighborhood on the city's south side. Her parents, Mark Gagnier and Janetta Grover, raised her alongside her siblings in a tight-knit family that valued hard work and ambition. Those who knew Janae during her childhood remember a vibrant, outgoing girl who wasn't afraid to dream big. She excelled in school, particularly in creative subjects, and showed an early interest in fashion and photography. After graduating from high school, Janae briefly attended college but found herself drawn more to the creative industries than traditional academic pursuits. She worked various jobs in retail and customer service while pursuing her interest in modeling and photography on the side. The Houston modeling scene in the late 2000s and early 2010s was competitive but offered opportunities for aspiring models willing to hustle. Janae began working with local photographers, building relationships within the industry, and gradually developing the skills that would serve her well in her later career. Janae's transformation into Mercedes Moore began around 2012 when she started taking social media more seriously as a platform for building her brand. The name Mercedes Moore wasn't chosen randomly. It represented the luxury lifestyle she aspired to and the sophisticated image she wanted to project. Initially, her Instagram account featured professional photos from modeling shoots, glamour shots, and carefully curated lifestyle content. She understood intuitively what many influencers would later learn through trial and error, that social media success required consistency, quality content, and authentic engagement with followers. By 2014, Mercedes had begun to gain serious traction on Instagram. Her follower count grew from hundreds of thousands, then tens of thousands. What set her apart from many other aspiring influencers was her understanding of her audience and her willingness to engage genuinely with her followers. She responded to comments, shared behind-the-scenes content, and created a sense of intimacy that made her followers feel connected to her life. The growth wasn't accidental. Mercedes studied successful influencers, analyzed what content performed best, and continuously refined her approach. She invested in high-quality photography, worked with professional stylists, and treated her Instagram account like the business it was becoming. As Mercedes' following grew, so did her opportunities. Brands began reaching out for partnerships and sponsored content. She worked with fashion companies, beauty brands, and lifestyle products, earning money through affiliate marketing and sponsored posts. Her rates increased as her audience grew, and she began to command significant fees for promotional content. The key to Mercedes' success was her ability to make luxury seem attainable while maintaining an aspirational quality. She showcased designer outfits, expensive restaurants, and exotic travel destinations, but she did so in a way that made her followers feel they were along for the journey rather than excluded from it. By 2016, Mercedes had amassed over 500,000 followers, and her income from social media partnerships was substantial. She used this success to invest in her future, purchasing real estate, designer items that she could feature in content, and professional services that helped her maintain her image. Mercedes was also strategic about her public appearances. She attended industry events, parties, and gatherings where she could network with other influencers, celebrities, and potential business partners. Photos from these events often appeared on her Instagram, showing her mingling with well-known rappers, athletes, and other celebrities. Her fashion sense became increasingly sophisticated as her budget allowed for higher-end pieces. She became known for her love of colorful wigs, which became something of a signature look. Each wig color and style was carefully chosen to complement her outfits and create visually striking photos that would stand out in followers' feeds. Mercedes made a decision that would significantly impact her career and income. She joined OnlyFans. The platform, which allows content creators to charge subscribers for exclusive content, was still relatively new but growing rapidly. OnlyFans gave Mercedes complete control over her content and income. The income from OnlyFans was transformative. As Mercedes' fame and income grew, so did her awareness of potential dangers that came with online visibility. She began receiving messages from fans that crossed the line from admiration to obsession. Some followers would comment on every post within minutes of it being published. Others would send lengthy direct messages professing their love, and a few made concerning statements about wanting to meet her in person. Mercedes confided in friends and family about these interactions. Her father, Mark Gagnier, was particularly concerned about her safety. My monthly conversation is, "Janae, you have all these followers. Some probably because they love you, some because they like your look, some more crazy and some obsessed," he later told reporters. She began limiting the personal information she shared online. While she continued to post content from restaurants, events, and locations around Houston, she became more careful about not revealing her exact location or daily routines. She avoided posting in real time from locations near her home and was selective about the background details visible in her photos. In 2020, Mercedes made the significant decision to move to a gated community for enhanced security. She chose the Cortland Apartments at Waterside Estates in Richmond, Texas, about 30 miles southwest of Houston. The complex featured 24-hour security, gated access, and a sense of privacy that made her feel safer. Mercedes also began varying her routines and being more cautious about predictable patterns. She would sometimes post content from different locations on different days, making it harder for anyone to track her movements. She avoided posting about future events or plans until after they had occurred. Despite her glamorous online presence, those who knew Mercedes personally described a very different person behind the camera. The woman who projected constant excitement and luxury on social media was actually quite private and family-oriented in her personal life. She valued quiet time at home, enjoyed cooking, and maintained close relationships with her family and a small circle of longtime friends. Mercedes was particularly close to her father, Mark, and her sister, London. Family gatherings often included Mercedes cooking for everyone, a passion she rarely showcased on social media. Her relationship with her father was especially strong. Mark Gagnier had supported his daughter's career from the beginning, even when he didn't fully understand the social media world she was navigating. Financially, Mercedes was far more conservative than her online image suggested. While she enjoyed luxury items and experiences, she was also saving and investing for the future. She had plans to launch her own fashion line, was exploring opportunities in reality television, and had expressed interest in eventually transitioning away from social media to focus on other business ventures. While Mercedes was building her empire and taking precautions to protect herself, Kevin Alexander Cordo was watching from nearly 1,000 miles away in Florida. The 34-year-old lived a life that couldn't have been more different from Mercedes' glamorous existence. Neighbors describe him as quiet and mostly keeping to himself, with few social media accounts and minimal online presence. Cordo's background painted a picture of an ordinary man with no criminal history or obvious red flags. He worked sporadically in various jobs, lived alone, and seemed to lead an unremarkable life. Friends and acquaintances would later express shock at learning about his actions, saying they never saw any signs of the obsession that was consuming him. But behind closed doors, Cordo had developed an intense fixation on Mercedes Moore that went far beyond typical fan behavior. He was one of her millions of followers across multiple platforms. But unlike most fans who simply enjoyed her content and moved on with their lives, Cordo's interest had evolved into something dangerous and all-consuming. The timeline of his obsession remains unclear, but investigators believe it began sometime in 2019 or 2020. Initially, he may have been just another follower who enjoyed her content. However, over time, his interest intensified. He subscribed to her OnlyFans account, which gave him access to more personal content and created a false sense of intimacy. OnlyFans' platform design, which encourages direct interaction between creators and subscribers, may have contributed to Accordo's escalating obsession. The ability to send private messages, request custom content, and interact more personally with Mercedes likely fed his delusion that they had a special relationship. Accordo began spending hours each day consuming Mercedes' content across all platforms. He saved hundreds of her photos and videos to his devices, creating an extensive collection that investigators would later discover. His browser history showed repeated searches for information about Mercedes, including attempts to find her real name, address, and personal details. Accordo's methods for tracking Mercedes demonstrated the terrifying reality of how much information can be gleaned from social media posts, even when the creator is trying to be careful. Despite Mercedes' precautions, Accordo was able to piece together enough information to locate her through a combination of digital detective work and determination. One of his primary methods was analyzing the backgrounds and settings of Mercedes' photos and videos. Even when she was careful not to reveal her exact location, small details in her content provided clues. The view from her apartment window, the design of her kitchen, the layout of her living space. All of these elements helped Accordo narrow down her location. He also monitored her tag locations on Instagram and other platforms. While Mercedes was careful not to post from locations near her home in real time, she did occasionally tag restaurants, events, and businesses in the Houston area. Accordo used this information to build a map of her regular haunts and gradually narrow down the geographic area where she lived. The investigation later revealed that Accordo had joined online forums and social media groups dedicated to discussing Mercedes and other OnlyFans creators. In these spaces, fans sometimes shared information about creators' locations, real names, and personal details. Accordo also created multiple fake social media accounts, which he used to interact with Mercedes' content and gather information. The investigation revealed that Accordo had been researching gated communities in the Houston area, particularly those in Richmond and surrounding suburbs. He had looked up information about security measures, access protocols, and the demographics of residents. This research suggested that he knew Mercedes lived in a secure community and was planning how to gain access. In late August 2021, Accordo's obsession reached its deadly conclusion. After months or possibly years of digital stalking, he made a decision to travel from Florida to Texas to find Mercedes in person. The planning for this trip was methodical and chilling in its single-minded purpose. Accordo rented a car rather than using his own vehicle, suggesting he had given some thought to avoiding detection. He brought minimal personal belongings, no extra clothes, no return ticket, no hotel reservations. This lack of preparation for an extended stay suggests he may have already decided that this would be a one-way trip. The drive from Florida to Texas is approximately 1,000 miles and would have taken him roughly 15 hours. Security footage from gas stations and rest stops along his route later provided investigators with a timeline of his journey. The footage showed a man who appeared calm and focused, giving no indication of the violent intentions that were driving him across the country. When Accordo arrived in the Houston area, he spent time driving around Richmond and the surrounding neighborhoods. Security cameras from local businesses captured his rental car on several occasions, showing that he was familiar with the area and had likely spent considerable time researching Mercedes' location before making the trip. Sunday, August 29, 2021, began like any other day for Mercedes Moore. She had posted on social media the previous evening, sharing photos from a night out with friends at a Houston restaurant. Phone records show she spoke with her sister London around 10 a.m., discussing plans for the upcoming week and family matters. The conversation was normal and relaxed, with no indication that Mercedes was worried about anything. Around noon, Mercedes exchanged text messages with a close friend about meeting up that evening. They were planning to go to dinner and possibly attend a party afterward. Mercedes was looking forward to the evening and had already begun planning her outfit for the occasion. Meanwhile, Kevin Alexander Accordo had been in the Richmond area since early morning. Security footage from nearby businesses showed his rental car with Florida plates driving through the area multiple times throughout the morning. He appeared to be conducting final reconnaissance, possibly timing the movements of residents and security personnel. Between 1 o'clock and 3 p.m., Accordo made his move. He somehow gained access to the Cortland apartments at Waterside Estates where Mercedes lived. Investigators believe Accordo likely used a technique called tailgating, where he followed closely behind another vehicle as it entered the complex. Once inside the complex, Accordo would have needed to locate Mercedes' specific apartment. His ability to find her apartment suggested he had either conducted previous reconnaissance or had more specific information about her location than investigators initially realized. What happened when Accordo encountered Mercedes remains partially unclear, as there were no witnesses to the initial confrontation. However, the evidence suggests that Mercedes answered her door, possibly believing Accordo was a delivery person, maintenance worker, or neighbor. The lack of forced entry indicated that she had opened the door voluntarily. The attack was swift and brutal. According to the Fort Bend County Medical Examiner's report, Mercedes died from strangulation and traumatic concussion. The evidence indicated that Accordo first struck her in the head with a blunt object, possibly to incapacitate her, then strangled her. The medical examiner noted defensive wounds on her hands and arms, showing that Mercedes had fought desperately for her life. After killing Mercedes, Accordo remained in her apartment for several hours. This extended time at the crime scene revealed the depth of his mental disturbance and the delusional nature of his obsession. Rather than fleeing immediately after the murder, he used the time to engage in bizarre behavior that provided investigators with insight into his psychological state. Using lipstick and pens found in Mercedes' apartment, Accordo wrote messages on the walls throughout the residence. These messages revealed his conflicted mental state and the delusions that had driven him to commit murder. Some of the messages were apologetic, addressed to Mercedes as if she could read them, "I'm sorry this happened," and "I never wanted to hurt you." Others showed his awareness of the magnitude of his actions. "I should have stayed in Florida, and this wasn't supposed to happen this way." The most disturbing messages revealed the possessive nature of his obsession. "I wish I never loved her, and she was supposed to be mine." The writing on the walls provided investigators with valuable insight into Accordo's mental state and motivations. At some point during the afternoon, Accordo began inflicting wounds on himself. The medical examiner later determined that he had stabbed himself multiple times in the chest and abdomen using a knife from Mercedes' kitchen. However, these self-inflicted wounds were not immediately fatal, and he survived for several hours after the attack. The horror of the crime was discovered around 4:30 p.m. when Mercedes' father, Mark Gagnier, arrived at her apartment. Mark had been concerned after not hearing from his daughter for what he considered an unusually long time. Mercedes typically stayed in regular contact with her family, especially her father, and her silence had triggered his parental instincts. "I know my daughter, and when I got to my daughter's house and it was locked up and she's not answering my phone call, which is not like her, I knew something was up," Mark later told reporters. When Mercedes didn't answer her door despite Mark's repeated knocking and calling, he made the difficult decision to force entry. "I didn't hesitate to kick the door down," he said. Mark discovered Mercedes' body on the floor of the downstairs living area. But the horror wasn't over. As he processed this unimaginable discovery, he heard sounds coming from upstairs. Moving cautiously up the stairs, Mark encountered an even more shocking sight. Kevin Alexander Accordo was still in the apartment, now dying from self-inflicted wounds. "What I saw, I wouldn't want any parent to go through," Mark said in a later interview, his voice breaking with emotion. Mark immediately called 911. Providing dispatchers with a chaotic but clear account of what he had found. Richmond police officers arrived within minutes, secured the scene, and confirmed that both Mercedes and Accordo were deceased. Richmond Police Department officers who responded to Mark Gagnier's 911 call immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. The Fort Bend County Sheriff's Office was called in to assist with the investigation. Detective units and crime scene technicians worked methodically to document every aspect of the scene. The Fort Bend County Medical Examiner's Office conducted autopsies on both bodies within 48 hours of the discovery. Mercedes' autopsy confirmed that she had died from homicide by strangulation and traumatic concussion. Accordo's autopsy revealed multiple self-inflicted stab wounds to the chest and abdomen. The medical examiner ruled his death a suicide. As the investigation expanded, detectives obtained search warrants for Accordo's residence in Florida, his electronic devices, and his online accounts. What they discovered painted a disturbing picture of escalating obsession that had been building for months or possibly years. Accordo's computer and phone contained hundreds of saved images of Mercedes from her various social media accounts. His search history revealed extensive research about Mercedes, including attempts to find her real name, address, and personal information. Investigators found evidence that he had joined online forums dedicated to discussing Mercedes and other OnlyFans creators. Perhaps most chilling was the discovery of a notebook in Accordo's possession that contained detailed plans for finding and approaching Mercedes. The notebook included maps of Houston, information about gated communities in the area, and what appeared to be a timeline for his trip to Texas. This evidence demonstrated that the murder was not a spontaneous act, but the culmination of careful planning and preparation. News of Mercedes Moore's murder spread rapidly through social media and traditional news outlets. Her millions of followers woke up to reports that the woman whose glamorous lifestyle they had followed and admired had been brutally murdered by an obsessed fan. The shock reverberated through the influencer community and beyond. Fellow content creators, particularly women in the OnlyFans and Instagram modeling space, expressed both grief and fear. Many shared their own experiences with stalking and harassment, revealing how common such behavior was in their industry. The murder highlighted the very real dangers that came with online fame and the vulnerability of content creators who shared their lives with millions of strangers. Celebrity supporters and fellow influencers posted tributes to Mercedes across social media platforms. Cardi B, who had followed Mercedes on Instagram, posted, "So sad and disgusting. A beautiful life taken too soon. Sending prayers to her family." The influencer community began discussing safety measures more seriously. Many creators started limiting the personal information they shared, invested in security systems, and some even hired personal protection. Platform companies faced renewed pressure to address stalking and harassment on their services. For Mercedes' family, the loss was devastating and incomprehensible. Mercedes' mother, Jana Gier, struggled to understand how her daughter could be killed by someone she had never met. "My beautiful daughter was taken by someone she never met, never spoke to. How is that possible?" she said at a press conference. Her sister London shared her grief on social media. "My heart is broken. I've lost my best friend, my confidant, my sister. Please give our family privacy as we try to comprehend this senseless act." Mark Gagnier, still traumatized by discovering his daughter's body, channeled his grief into advocacy for social media safety. He began speaking publicly about the dangers of online fame and the need for better protection for content creators. No father should find his child like that. No one should die because they shared pictures online. Something has to change. The family established the Mercedes Moore Foundation, dedicated to educating content creators about privacy and safety measures. The foundation provides resources and guidance for influencers on how to protect themselves while maintaining their online presence. The murder of Mercedes Moore serves as a stark reminder of the dark side of social media fame and the very real dangers that can accompany online visibility. Her case highlights several critical issues that continue to challenge content creators, platform companies, and law enforcement agencies. First, the case demonstrates how traditional stalking behaviors have evolved in the digital age. Kevin Accordo was able to develop an intense obsession with Mercedes without ever having any direct contact with her. The constant stream of content she shared created a false sense of intimacy that fed his delusions and ultimately led to violence. Second, the murder highlights the inadequacy of current legal frameworks for addressing digital stalking and harassment. Law enforcement agencies often struggle to investigate and prosecute online threats, particularly when they cross state lines. Third, Mercedes' case reveals the vulnerability of content creators who share personal details online. Despite her precautions, Accordo was able to piece together enough information from her social media posts to track her down. This demonstrates the need for much more sophisticated privacy measures and awareness among content creators. The tragedy also raises questions about the responsibility of social media platforms to protect their users. While companies like Instagram and OnlyFans have implemented some safety features, critics argue that these measures are insufficient given the scale of the problem. The murder of Mercedes Moore represents more than just a single tragic crime. It's a wake-up call about the realities of life in the digital age. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about online fame, parasocial relationships, and the vulnerability of those who share their lives with the world through social media. Mercedes was more than her Instagram feed or her OnlyFans account. She was a daughter, sister, and friend whose life was cut short by someone who couldn't distinguish between an online persona and a real human being. Her family's grief, her community's shock, and the fear felt by fellow content creators all serve as reminders of the human cost of digital age violence. As we continue to navigate the evolving landscape of social media and online fame, Mercedes' story must serve as a catalyst for change. Whether through improved platform safety measures, stronger legal protections, or better education for content creators, her death should not be in vain. The questions raised by her murder remain relevant today. How do we balance the desire for online connection with the need for personal safety? What responsibility do platforms have to protect their users? How can law enforcement better address digital age threats? This tragic story serves as a crucial reminder about the importance of online safety in our interconnected world. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe to True Crime Station for more in-depth true crime coverage that honors victims and examines the broader implications of these cases. What safety measures do you think are most important for content creators in today's digital landscape? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's continue this important conversation about protecting those who share their lives online.